Old Swanner here. Today we've got a method you can use to improve any hammer, any pull, or any combination of the two in whatever situation you'll ever find them on guitar forever. Let's start with what a pull-off isn't. If I'm pulling from 8 to 5 here, the pull-off is not lifting finger 4 away from the B string and hoping it leaves some residual sound there. And you can probably hear something there, but what we're after is a full pull across the string. That will give it as much volume as the original pick note. See here, I'm first picking with the thumb and then effectively with the little finger here. You could use 3. I'm thinking of A minor pentatonic down here, so a pretty standard move. But same idea, if I'm pulling with finger 3, I want that finger to go right across the string. So an easy way to find out what's really required of your the finger you want to execute the pull-off with, if we bring the thumb into fret 8 rather than the little finger or third finger, I'm holding down fret 5 nice and tight with finger 1, and I'm just going to pluck the B string. Now if you try this, you're going to find you don't need too much force with the thumb, but finger 1 of course has to press hard enough to stop the string from being moved out of position, but you don't need very much with the thumb at all. And likewise, when I'm using a left hand finger to execute the pull off, I don't need that much with it either. It's not really this finger that's doing the work, although it might be fairly awkward to start. It shouldn't feel like too much physical work with that finger. It's this finger here that has to press hard to catch the note that I'm pulling to. Now this way we get nice even notes. Each note is as loud as the other. By way of example, I'm just going to record a little bit of hammering and pulling between these two notes. First in the fashion I prescribe, which is with the full-blooded pull-off across the string, and secondly with the finger going up and down. So initially, let's put 5 and 8 together. And I'll put that waveform up on the screen. Then without changing any settings on the microphone, I'll now lift the little finger away rather than going across the string, and we can compare. And it's going to be pretty obvious that the first method gives you much stronger notes. The first method's volume will compare to notes that are picked with the right hand. Let's play the same thing. And I shall add the waveform on the screen now. We can see that that compares very favourably to the hammered and pulled notes I began with. To some extent you can get by cranking up the distortion on your amp, which compresses the sound and it's going to make those quieter notes a bit louder, but there's no substitute for good technique with this, and you'll find that in particular if you ever try anything like this on an acoustic, even a classical. You really need to get through that string to keep it vibrating as strongly as it was when it was picked. So how to practice to get this stuff working? And once it works, to get it improving and to keep it improving. It's not too complex. We can pull out the problem from any piece of music you're looking at with an awkward hammer pull combination, find where the tough bits are and plug them into the method we're about to look at now. I'll use the two notes we've been looking at up to now as the example. So we want to learn to be able to, in particular, pull from this note to 5, from 8 to 5. But I'm going to twin that always with the hammer. Put it into 2 beats, which will break down into 4 steps. The first move will always be to pick the note that's to pull. There's my fret 8 is played. The second move, I'm going to execute the pull off, in this case with the little finger, and I'm going to ensure that the pulling finger ends up on the fretboard. This one's ended up between the B and E strings. I've been caught effectively by the next string, which is of course an awkward position for this finger to be in. No problem, we'll deal with that now. I'm going to repick the string, and when I repick I will lift finger 4 and aim it back where it came from. So now it's aiming back at fret 8 of the B string, and finally the 4th move I will hammer. Not much velocity in that string to keep it going, that gets easier as we get a bit faster. So the 4 moves again, I've got pick, pull, lift and aim, hammer. Pick, pull, lift, hammer. Pick, pull, lift, hammer. Pick, pull, lift, hammer. And we can do this with literally any hammer pull-off combination, as we'll see throughout the rest of this video. In the accompanying blog article to this video, linked to my left, I have drawn out full instructions for that pattern, and you will notice that I have tied them all to the foot tap. To me, that's the most powerful way to get this stuff into the right place in the brain in the quickest fashion possible. So running the pattern again, we get the 4 movements. I've got my 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... Now that's the easy way to get that to work with a metronome for when you want to measure it. It gets you doing everything very robotically. It's something I've been very surprised at the power of, having used it now for many years in lessons. It turns things into this strict sequence. You know exactly what's happening at the right time, and it makes it fairly easy then to translate these things into music as well, with a twist and a tweak here and there. We can take that one little pattern. It's not very exciting, it's 2 notes, but we could twist and tweak that in so many ways to come up with any number of licks. And a lot of it is what I call directional vocabulary. For example, as I pull with the finger's going down while the foot comes up. Then the foot goes down, but the finger comes up. And finally, the foot comes up, but the finger goes down. You can also hear, it's pretty musical just with my own foot for company as a drum, effectively. It's my bass drum hitting out the beats. But it really chops those 4 movements down into something fairly musical and actually fairly usable. You might be surprised to find out. The next example involves 2 pull-offs on 1 string, 3 fingers on the string. First we'll be pulling from 8 to 7, and then we'll pull from 7 to 5. And that's in the context of a 4-note lick. Which I used at the start of this video in my intro. So this is really made up of the 2 separate pull-offs, which we can pull out and practice as before, but in isolation. So the first of those will be learning to pull from 8 to 7 on the G string, which we plug in and we get the same pattern again. Will be pick, pull, lift, hammer. Pick, pull, lift, hammer. Pick, pull, lift, hammer. The 3rd finger is the one doing the work, really. Remember, 4's just sort of curling in, moving around a bit. But 3 has to hold rock solid, and that's pretty tough because as 4 moves, it wants to pull 3. These 2 guys are tied together. So as 4 moves, it wants to pull 3 around, which we can counteract by pressing harder with 3. But then as we press harder with 3, it tends to make getting finger 4 to do its work harder. Again, you could try this with fingers 2 and 3 if you prefer. I've always done it this way. We could have finger 1 on, helping to hold the string is probably not a bad thing, but it's worth examining it where finger 1's not allowed to be on the fretboard as well, to really learn about what it feels like to press hard with finger 3. But nonetheless, it's plugged into the same pattern. You can measure the speed you can do it, and if your practice is good, you will see this speed go up pretty fast. If you're not measuring, let's say you're 20 beats per minute today, but you're 25 beats per minute tomorrow, if you haven't measured that, you haven't got a clue. But when you measure it, you say, wow, I'm 25% faster. Let's keep doing what I'm doing and run it until that ceases to yield any improvement. Most likely the easier part of that pull-off combination is going from 7 to 5 on the G string. Same idea, we can plug it in, pick, pull, lift hammer, pick, pull, lift hammer, pick, and so on and so on. You can measure the speed of that, make sure it goes up. My guess is that the 4 to 3 or 2 to 3, if you prefer it that way, pull-off hammer combination is going to be a lot slower than the other one. But I've added benchmarking boxes for each. You can check yours off and see if I'm right or not. Once we've got the two functional, we could then build those as the next stepping stone. Maybe something like this. Pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull. And there's all sorts of stuff you can pick up on in here. I think the first time I ran that I was not thinking too much about it. And I think my fourth finger was allowed to come over here. But in practice we can really up the ante. And let's add the proviso that when I pick finger 3 now, I'm going to make sure that finger 4 is back where it's going to be required. And to pull with 3 without 4 retracting back is not easy. There's certain speeds I can do it at generally when I'm playing, as long as the notes are coming out good. I don't really care too much. But should I want to get better and faster at a move like this, adding this requirement of keeping finger 4 in the ballpark for its next move can make a big difference in your top speed on this sort of stuff. The faster you can do it absolutely perfectly like that with the finger not being pulled out of position but staying here, the faster it's likely you can execute this when it's just time to switch off the brain and play. Once all these building blocks work, then the lick itself that may have looked quite oppressive to begin should start to come into view. If you recall, it's 4 notes from the 5 on the B string and then down that 8, 7, 5 combination on the G string. The glue that gets us from the end of the lick back to the start, you see I finished, obviously I need this finger to be upright, it's tough to pull to that, so I'd be certainly pulling to an upright first finger. Once I've finished that sequence, to start again, I'm just going to go flat with the first finger across to the B string, what I call a layover. Then we can start again. As I play this first note, I want to have this first pulling finger ready above the G string, ready to drop on now. But that's the sort of lick that can stay way off limits to people for a lifetime. But when approached, as we've just seen, it's not really something that anybody should find they can't do with some good practice. That's a little snippet of a Hendrix style trill as used in Under the Bridge, very similar to that by John Frusciante. And of course we can approach the awkward part of that, which is this hammer pull combination while we have a full chord held down, including the thumb on the bass, hammering onto 9. It's pretty awkward again if you've never tried this sort of thing before, but it can be approached, of course, using exactly the same method we've just seen. We can pull out the awkward part, which is the hammer pull combination here, and put it into our same system, which will be pick, pull, lift, hammer, pick, pull, lift, hammer, pick, pull, lift, hammer. That's how you can zoom in on it and check that that string's functioning nicely. Of course, what we're after is knowing that the rest of the chord is still going to be ringing, and we can check that by strumming the whole chord once the ear has pulled in on the sound that we need to be getting on the G string. But if there's ever any doubt about how good that's functioning, just zooming right in on that one string and measuring your speed, should that be necessary. You can check it against the record speed, how fast you can do it, and you've got a pretty good idea of whether you're in the ballpark, and if not, how much practice will be required to get you there. but guaranteed, if you practice this stuff right, you'll see those speeds going up pretty steadily.